"Step aside with the staff. You're just the babysitter." The words sliced through the warm hum of laughter and the squeals of children in the bounce house. For a moment I wasn't sure I'd heard correctly. But when my daughter-in-law Vanessa fixed her eyes on me, chin-tilted voice dripping with authority, I realized she had just announced my place in this family in front of everyone at my own granddaughter's birthday party. I froze my hands, still sticky with frosting from arranging cupcakes on the buffet table. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A few parents looked down at their phones, pretending they hadn't heard. My son Michael gave a weak laugh, murmured Vanessa. Not now, but he didn't step closer. He didn't defend me. Humiliation wrapped itself around me like a heavy shawl. I wasn't family anymore, I was the help. The woman who had rocked Lily to sleep through countless colicky nights, who had driven miles in the rain to pick her up from daycare, was suddenly reduced to a title no one dared challenge. Babysitter. Just the babysitter. I felt the sting of tears, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I gripped the strap of my worn leather handbag, where deep inside a brass key pressed against my palm. That tiny piece of metal had sat quietly in my possession for years, invisible to everyone else. They thought I was powerless, a shadow in the corner of family pictures. But I knew better. As the music faltered and someone cleared their throat to break the silence, I took a step back, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. If they wanted to see me as a babysitter, fine. But soon enough, they would learn exactly what this babysitter kept locked away. My name is Eleanor Brooks, and I am 68 years old. For most of my life, I have been the kind of woman people overlook, quiet, practical, and steady. I worked where I was needed, I kept my head down, and I did what I thought every decent mother was supposed to do: sacrifice. My husband passed away when I was 52, leaving me with one son, Michael, and a house full of bills. I could have given up then, but I didn't. I took double shifts as a motel housekeeper during the day and worked nights pouring coffee at a 24-hour diner just off the interstate. Sleep was scarce, but determination was plenty. Michael was bright and ambitious. I wanted to make sure money never strangled his chances. Every paycheck I tucked a little away, sometimes just $20, sometimes $50, into a college savings account. I remember folding those statements carefully into a shoebox under my bed, whispering to myself, "Someday, this will matter." My hands were always chapped from bleach water and detergent, but they held his future with care. I wasn't glamorous, not the kind of mother who brought homemade cookies to every PTA meeting or dressed in fashionable clothes. My shoes were worn. My car was old, and my idea of a splurge was buying the nicer brand of detergent when it was on sale. But what I lacked in polish, I gave in grit. I believed hard work was enough to earn respect. When Michael married Vanessa, I hoped she would see me for who I was, a woman who had given her best so her son could stand tall. At first I tried. I babysat whenever she asked, cooked Sunday dinners, and slipped gas money into Michael's wallet when the bills piled up. When Vanessa was pregnant with Lily, I covered hospital copays she didn't even know about. I wanted their little family to have stability I never had in my early years of marriage. But it didn't take long before I realized I wasn't considered part of the inner circle. Vanessa liked things picture perfect, and I was anything but. My thrift store dresses didn't fit her idea of family photos. My plain way of speaking clashed with her constant need to impress. She began calling me the babysitter in casual jokes, then in sharper comments. At first I brushed it off, telling myself she didn't mean harm. But the more she said it, the clearer it became this wasn't a joke. It was her way of putting me in my place. Michael. He noticed, of course, but he hated conflict. Whenever I hinted at how the words hurt, he sighed and said, "Mom, it's not worth arguing. That's just how she talks." So I stayed silent. I had learned long ago that silence could be a shield. Still, I kept giving. Every Christmas, I contributed to Lily's 529 plan. Every time their car broke down, I dipped into my savings for repairs. And the house they live in, they think of it as theirs, but in truth, it sits in a trust created after my husband died. I am the trustee. The deed, the property taxes, the escrow accounts, all of it runs through my oversight. They never asked, and I never volunteered. Some things are easier left unspoken until the right moment. I carried envelopes of receipts, statements, and legal letters tucked neatly in a fireproof box at home. Not because I wanted leverage, but because I wanted order. My husband used to tell me, paper speaks louder than memory, Ellie. And he was right. Over time, those papers became proof of a life's worth of sacrifice. So, who am I? I am Eleanor, the woman in the background. The grandmother people thank politely but never feature in the photo albums. The babysitter who folds laundry while the party goes on in the next room. I may look small and tired, but I have been the quiet architect of their security. And while Vanessa may see only an aging woman in thrift store shoes, I know the truth. I hold the key literally and figuratively to more than she realizes. Respect may have slipped from her vocabulary, but I have not forgotten its value. One day I thought she will learn that silence is not the same as weakness. The first time Vanessa called me just the babysitter, I laughed thinking she was joking. We were standing in her spotless kitchen while I packed Lily's lunch. "You're a lifesaver," she said, with a tight smile. I don't know what I'd do without my babysitter. The word stung, but I forced a chuckle. Maybe she was trying to be playful. But the more she repeated it, the less it sounded like a joke. Her words were followed by little reminders that I wasn't really part of their family decisions. They started a group chat for party planning, school meetings, and vacations. I wasn't included. Instead, Michael would forward me a single message at the last minute. "Mom, can you watch Lily?" Saturday always phrased like a favor, but really a demand. I told myself it was fine. I had time and I loved being with Lily. But every request came with an assumption. If I said I couldn't make it, Vanessa's response was a sharp, "Well, I guess we'll just cancel our plans then." That guilt was heavy, so I said yes again and again. One afternoon, I spent hours assembling goodie bags for Lily's preschool party. Tiny plastic toys, candy and ribbons carefully tied. When I dropped them off, Vanessa chirped to another mom on the phone. "Yes, our babysitter put these together. Isn't she handy?" Babysitter. Not mother-in-law, not Nana, just hired help. The money issue was worse. I gave them a gas station gift card once tucked in a birthday card for Michael. Weeks later, I overheard Vanessa telling a friend she'd resold it for cash because those things are inconvenient. It wasn't just disrespect, it was dismissal of every gesture I made. Then there were the small humiliations. A group text instructed me to wear navy or beige to the birthday party so you won't distract in the photos. Distract. I almost didn't go at all. But Lily's smile was enough to keep me walking through their front door, even when the welcome felt paper thin. It wasn't just words. Vanessa treated me like an employee. I'd clean the kitchen after dinners, fold their laundry, or sweep up toys while she scrolled through her phone. "You're so good at staying busy," she'd remark. And when I thought maybe Michael would say something, he only shrugged. "She likes things a certain way, Mom. Don't take it personally." But how could I not? Every time she diminished me, Michael let it slide. The boy who once clung to my hand now stood silent while his wife placed me beneath them. His silence was almost worse than her cruelty. I endured because of Lily. That little girl would run to me with open arms shouting Nana and wrapping her arms tight around my legs. She didn't see me as the help. To her, I was the one who sang lullabies, baked cookies shaped like stars, and whispered stories at bedtime. I told myself that was enough. Yet the pattern grew clearer. When Vanessa introduced me to her friends, she'd say, "This is Eleanor, she helps us out a lot." Helps us out. Not mother, not family, just a helper. At church, my neighbor Ruth noticed. She watched me drop Lily off one morning and asked Eleanor, "Do they treat you right over there?" I shrugged, embarrassed. "I teach people how to treat me," I said softly. Ruth frowned. "And what have you been teaching them?" That question lingered with me. I wasn't blind. I knew Vanessa resented me. Maybe because she wanted full control. Maybe because I reminded her that she hadn't built everything from scratch. But what she didn't know was that her home, her security, even Lily's future college fund, were tied to the quiet sacrifices I had made. Every month I kept receipts, hospital bills, paid tuition deposits, property tax checks. I stored them neatly in a fireproof box, along with the trust documents my late husband and I had created. And on my key ring, always with me, was the brass key to the safe deposit box that held the originals. I never wanted to wield those papers like a weapon. I wanted respect, given freely, not forced. But as Vanessa's words sharpened and Michael's silence deepened, the daydream of revealing the truth grew stronger. The final straw before the party came one Thursday night. Vanessa called frantic, "Can you stay overnight with Lily? We've got a last-minute trip." I agreed, of course. But when they returned, Vanessa scolded me for letting Lily play with finger paint at the table. "This mess is why you'll never be more than a babysitter," she snapped. That night, as I scrubbed paint off my hands, I stared at the envelopes on my dresser. Each one marked College Hospital House, proof of everything they refused to acknowledge, proof that I was not disposable. I prayed for patience. I told myself not to create a scene. But deep down, I knew a day would come when silence would no longer be kindness. It would be surrender. And I had not lived this long, fought this hard, only to surrender my dignity. When Vanessa handed me the beige dress code for the birthday party, I folded it neatly and smiled. Let her think I was small. Let her think I was powerless. She had no idea the kind of power I carried in those envelopes and in that key. And as I zipped my handbag that morning, slipping the papers inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. The morning of Lily's birthday dawned bright and sticky with summer heat. I arrived early, quilt folded carefully in tissue paper, ready to present it as my gift. I had stitched it for months, every square embroidered with something Lily loved. Stars, butterflies, her name spelled out in cheerful colors. I imagined her face lighting up when she unwrapped it. But as soon as I stepped onto the patio, Vanessa swooped in, lips tight behind her gloss. "Oh, just set that over there," she said, pointing to a chair already piled high with brightly wrapped boxes. She didn't even glance at the quilt. My heart dipped, but I forced a smile. "It's something special," I said softly. She was already gone, barking orders at the caterer. The house was decked out like a magazine spread, pastel balloons, a rented bounce house-themed plates stacked high. Parents milled around with paper cups of soda, nodding politely at me, some assuming I was hired help. I busied myself at the buffet table arranging cupcakes. I told myself it didn't matter how I was seen, Lily would know. When it was time for the family photos, Vanessa clapped her hands. "All right, let's get grandparents and parents by the cake." I stepped forward, smoothing my beige dress, but she blocked me with a flat palm. "Eleanor, would you mind holding the stroller off to the side? It'll be less crowded that way." Less crowded, less family. A ripple of discomfort passed through the group. Michael shifted his weight, but he didn't move. A camera phone pointed at him, waiting. He gave me a helpless look, and I felt something inside me crack. Still, I took the stroller and stood back, eyes burning. The children were herded around the cake. The smell of frosting and melted candles filled the air. I caught Ruth's gaze across the yard. She had come as a neighbor, not family, but her eyes were steady, watchful. She knew what was happening. Then came the words that ended it all. Vanessa's voice rang out sharp and clear. "Step aside with the staff. You're just the babysitter." Laughter and chatter fell silent. The bounce house squeaked in the distance. Someone's soda can hissed as it opened, the sound jarring in the quiet. Every guest heard it. Phones hovered mid-air, some even recording. Heat flooded my face. I gripped the stroller handle, knuckles white. In that instant, every sacrifice, every receipt, every night I spent scrubbing floors or stitching quilts collided inside me. Babysitter. Just the babysitter. Michael cleared his throat. "Vanessa, not now. Weak. Empty." He did not move to my side. I felt Lily's eyes on me, confusion in her little face. "Nana, why are you sad?" she whispered, tugging at my skirt. I bent down, kissing her soft hair. "I'm okay, Ladybug," I murmured, though I was anything but. The crowd pretended not to stare, but their silence was deafening. I straightened, smoothed my dress, and reached for my handbag. My fingers brushed the brass key tucked inside, cool and solid against my skin. My lifeline. I could have walked away. That would have been easier, quieter, what I had always done. But something inside me shifted. Enough. Enough of swallowing hurt. Enough of silence mistaken for weakness. I stepped forward. The chatter stilled further. Vanessa raised an eyebrow, lips curled in triumph, certain I would retreat again. Instead, I placed my handbag on the gift table and unzipped it slowly. I could feel every eye on me. From the inner pocket, I drew out 3 envelopes thick with papers. Their edges were worn from years of handling. Alongside them, the brass key gleamed in the sunlight. My voice, when it came, was calm, steadier than I felt. "If I am just the babysitter," I said, "then you should all know what this babysitter has been keeping safe." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Michael blinked, his mouth parting. Vanessa's smile faltered, though she quickly tried to mask it. I laid the envelopes down on the table, one by one, each labeled in my careful handwriting, "Lily's College, Hospital, and Birth, the House." I didn't open them yet. That moment would come. But I stood taller than I had in years, watching the color drain from Vanessa's face as she realized something she had never considered before she had underestimated me. The party music stuttered, then stopped. The children, sensing tension, grew quiet. All eyes were on me, the woman they had dismissed, the woman called just the babysitter. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of my dignity returning. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating, as I slid the first envelope closer to the center of the table. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the release of years of restraint. "This," I said, tapping the thick packet marked, "Lily's College is the future of my granddaughter." Every quarter for 4 years, I deposited money into her 529 plan. The account is in my name, every receipt stamped, every statement signed. "Vanessa, when you spoke about private schools and enrichment programs, you didn't know whose funds were making them possible. They were mine." Gasps fluttered through the crowd. A couple of mothers leaned in, whispering. Michael's eyes widened, confusion painted across his face. Vanessa crossed her arms, trying to smirk, but the corners of her mouth twitched. I placed the second envelope beside the first. "Hospital and Birth." The word "paid" was stamped across dozens of receipts inside. "When Lily was born," I continued, "I paid the hospital co-pays, the pharmacy bills, and the delivery fees you could not cover. I wanted my granddaughter to come into this world safely, without debt hanging over her crib. These papers prove it." Vanessa's cheeks flushed crimson. "You don't need to parade this in front of everyone," she hissed. But her voice had lost its authority. I ignored her. My hand lingered on the last envelope, the heaviest of all the house. I drew out the brass key, its gleam catching the sunlight, and laid it gently on top. "This house you stand in," I said, clearly projecting my voice so the guests at the back could hear, "does not belong outright to Michael and Vanessa. It is held in a trust created by my late husband and maintained by me. I am the trustee. The property taxes, the escrow, the very deed, it all runs through me. This key belongs to the safe deposit box at the credit union where the original documents rest." A stunned murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped audibly. Vanessa stammered, "That's impossible. Michael, tell her." But Michael's face had gone pale. He knew I wasn't lying. I had shown him pieces before in quieter times. He simply hadn't wanted to believe the extent. I straightened my shoulders, letting the moment settle. "I had planned to transfer trusteeship to you, Michael, on your 35th birthday on the condition that this household was stable and respectful. But today, in front of our friends and neighbors, I was told I am only a babysitter. That condition, I'm afraid, has not been met." My words dropped like stones into a pond, each ripple widening the silence. Vanessa sputtered, "You can't just change the rules." "Yes," I replied softly but firmly. "I can. I have the authority granted by law and by my husband's will. Distributions can be paused, ownership can be reviewed, and from this day forward they will be." The color drained from Vanessa's face, leaving only a mask of shock. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Michael finally stepped forward, voice breaking. "Mom, I didn't know it was like this." I met his gaze, sadness tugging at my heart. "You didn't want to know, but now you do." The guests who had moments earlier watched me shrink under humiliation now watched Vanessa falter. They saw the balance of power shift in real time. I gathered the envelopes back into my bag, leaving only the image of the key on the table as a reminder. the so-called babysitter, had just revealed herself as the guardian of their home, their child's future, their very stability. For the first time in years, I spoke without trembling. If respect is too heavy a price, then you will soon learn how expensive ingratitude can be. The air was thick with shock as I slid the envelopes back into my handbag. I could feel every eye on me, the weight of their stares pressing against my back. For once, it wasn't pity or dismissal. It was recognition. I turned to Michael first. His face was pale, jaw-tight, eyes darting between me and Vanessa. He looked like a man standing on shifting ground, suddenly aware that the foundation beneath him wasn't as solid as he thought. "Mom," he whispered, I didn't realize." "You didn't want to realize," I answered gently but firmly. "You let silence be easier than truth. But now silence is gone." Vanessa tried to laugh, high and brittle. "This is ridiculous. Nobody cares about your paperwork. This is our home," Michael tell her. But Michael didn't move to her side. His shoulders slumped. "Vanessa, I can't," he muttered. "She's telling the truth." The guests, unsure where to look, shifted uncomfortably. Some parents began whispering. A neighbor cleared his throat. The image-perfect party had cracked open, revealing something raw and real beneath. I straightened my dress, lifted my chin, and spoke clearly. "From this day forward, I will not be treated as staff. I will not be scheduled like an employee. If you need me, you may ask me as family, with notice and with respect. If that cannot be given, then I will decline." Gasps rippled again. To some, my words might have seemed harsh. To me, they were survival. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. Her face burned crimson. She reached for Michael's arm, but he shook her off, shame and conflict warring across his features. I continued, my voice calm but resolute. "The trust will not dissolve on your timeline, Vanessa. I will meet with the credit union Monday morning. Michael, you are welcome to attend. So are you, Vanessa, if you wish to understand the reality of your household. Until then, discretionary distributions are paused." Vanessa finally found her voice. "You can't do that. I already have," I said. The crowd was hushed. Even the children had gone quiet, sensing the gravity in the air. Lily clung to my skirt, looking up at me with wide, questioning eyes. I bent down, smoothing her hair. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I whispered. "Nana's just making sure everything is safe for you." I stood again, pressing the quilt into Ruth's hands. "Would you give this to Lily, please? It deserves to be presented properly." Ruth's eyes glistened. She nodded firmly, stepping forward. "Of course," she said, her voice carrying conviction. She held up the quilt for all to see, letting its bright colors shine. "This is love stitched into fabric. It's from your grandmother, Lily. Don't ever forget who made it for you." Applause broke out, tentative at first, then stronger. Vanessa's lips tightened into a thin line as her picture-perfect party slipped out of her control. Michael finally moved toward me, his voice low. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have defended you." I searched his face. "Yes," I said softly. "You should have. But now you must decide if you will continue standing silent or if you will stand with me." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. For the first time, he didn't look like a boy avoiding conflict. He looked like a man facing it. "I'll be there Monday," he said. Vanessa let out a scoff. "This is absurd. You're letting her humiliate us." "No, Vanessa," I replied evenly. "You did that yourself." The party sputtered after that. Guests made excuses, slipping away with polite nods. The cake sat half-eaten, the balloons bobbing silently. What had been staged as a flawless event had ended in fragments. I gathered my things deliberately, not rushed, not ashamed. As I walked toward the door, I felt lighter. My dignity, once buried under silence, had risen to the surface. Outside, the cicadas buzzed in the trees, the summer air heavy but cleansing. Ruth caught up with me, resting a hand on my shoulder. "Eleanor, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen," she whispered. "It wasn't bravery," I said quietly. It was necessity. Driving home, the brass key lay on the passenger seat beside me. It gleamed in the fading light, a symbol of what I had carried all along, authority-proof truth. I realized I had never truly been powerless. I had only been patient. That patience was over. The following Monday, I walked into the credit union with my head high. Michael sat across from me, hands folded tightly, eyes downcast but present. Vanessa came too, her face pinched, her tone clipped. She asked questions, demanded explanations, tried to argue, but the documents spoke louder than any denial. I explained calmly, the trust is conditional, respect and stability are required. If those are not present, I retain discretion. You can live in this house, yes, but under my oversight. And if respect continues to be withheld, other options exist. I can rent at market value, restructure, or even sell. I will do what protects Lily and honors my husband's wishes. Vanessa sputtered with outrage, but Michael stayed silent this time, not from weakness but from shame. He finally whispered, "We'll do better, Mom. I promise." Promises were easy. Proof would take time, but I had time and I had the documents. When I left that meeting, I knew the balance of our family had shifted permanently. They would never look at me the same way again. And that was exactly the point. Looking back on that day, I realized it was less about humiliation and more about awakening. For years, I let myself believe that silence was the noble path, that if I gave enough, endured enough, one day respect would follow. But respect is not earned by being invisible. Respect must be demanded by living with dignity. I do not regret the sacrifices I made. I would scrub floors again if it meant Michael had a chance to stand taller. I would save pennies in jars if it gave Lily a brighter future. But what I will never do again is allow those sacrifices to erase me. I am not just a babysitter. I am a mother, a grandmother, and the steward of a legacy my husband and I built together. Vanessa learned that day that cruelty has consequences. Michael learned that silence can wound as deeply as words. And I learned that the key I carried was not just to a safe deposit box, it was to my own strength. To anyone listening, never let someone reduce you to less than what you are. Families can betray children, can disappoint, and in-laws can belittle. But you must know your worth and protect it fiercely. Because in the end, love is not proven by how quietly you suffer, but by how firmly you stand.